Happy to introduce the next panel discussion here, picking up on the themes that we heard in the last session around challenges, obstacles, some of the barriers of deploying this stuff into the healthcare environment and the impacts. And so, great panel here. Pavan from ZS is going to lead us, and take it away, guys.
Great. Hi, everyone. My name is Pavan Anne. I'm a partner with ZS, leading our precision medicine practice. ZS focuses on partnering with life sciences companies, including pharma, diagnostic, and technology companies in successfully developing and commercializing diagnostic technologies and therapeutics to make the promise of precision medicine a reality. I'm very delighted to welcome my fellow panelists, Eric. Eric is a Chief Medical Officer at PathAI. And he brings 20 years of experience in precision medicine, and in his prior role, he was a Chief Medical and Scientific Officer at Roche Diagnostics. I also wanted to introduce another panelist, Michael Rivers. Michael has been with Roche Diagnostics and has had several leadership roles at Roche, and most recently, over the past decade, he's been leading their digital pathology lifecycle team. Michael also is a past president of Digital Pathology Association and is a board member of Digital Pathology Association. Before I kick off this panel, I wanted to reflect on the journey of AI in pathology. If you look at the journey over the past 25 years, it has been nothing short of transformational. If you look at it all the way from 1990s, when the first whole slide imaging screener was introduced, to the 2010s, when there was a regulatory push towards making digital pathology accessible, with the COVID pandemic even accelerating digital pathology further. And we have seen since the COVID pandemic, we have seen a lot of partnerships and investments from all the different ecosystem players that have made significant progress in AI and pathology. So we've started talking about AI pathology already, but there have been a lot of misconceptions about what is AI in pathology. I wanted to ask Eric, how do you see, what are different methods that you see in AI?
Yeah, thanks, Pavan. First of all, thanks so much for including us on this panel, and thank you all for attending. So on the topic of misconceptions, I can take the entire time to talk about misconceptions, but if I were to focus on one, and I think we have a slide that we're going to show here, the one I would pick is that I'm in the digital and AI pathology field, and when I talk to people about AI, a common misconception is that all digital pathology AI tools leverage generative AI. And of course, this is because of ChatGPT. So people think all digital pathology applications are driven by ChatGPT, which of course is not the case. And so it's become a standard slide for me to include in all the talks I give, this slide that I'm showing now. And I think all of us in the field of digital and AI and broader precision medicine, in my opinion, need to become fluent with the different machine learning methods. And this is not meant to be exhaustive. This is just some examples of the methodologies that are commonly used in digital and AI pathology. Of course, generative AI is one of those techniques. I would think we're still early in understanding what generative AI is going to bring the field. Things like synthetic histopathology, transforming algorithms for scanner images. But the reality is most of the applications today are using convolutional neural networks, which is a highly supervised method, or on the other end of the spectrum, end-to-end methods like multiple instance learning, which is a weakly supervised method that's really good at understanding and discovering novel associations that might be present in the pathology slides that we're analyzing. And then you have techniques like graph neural networks, which are sort of in between. So maybe I'll leave it there, but that's a common misperception and the reason why I include this slide in all my presentations now.
That's great. That's an excellent way to depict different AI methods, and it's a very easy way to understand. Thanks for sharing. Mike, I have a question for you. There's been a lot of promise for AI and digital pathology. Everyone's been talking about it's super promising, right? How do you see the promise of digital and AI pathology?
Yeah,
Absolutely. Appreciate the question. And first of all, Pavan, thank you for the opportunity to be here today and be on the panel. It's a great chance to reconnect with Eric, which is fantastic, but also to talk about digital pathology. And I do appreciate the question. I think there is a tremendous opportunity for both digitization of pathology as well as then the application of AI in pathology. And as you noted on your history, this is not necessarily new, right? There's been several decades that we've been experimenting with whole slide imaging and kind of the potential of digital pathology. I really think we are now at an inflection point where this is accelerating. As you noted, the pandemic has been a catalyst for this for sure. But I think the potential for AI is also a strong pull on the digitization of pathology. So anatomic pathology, tissue testing today is going through a fundamental transformation from what has largely been a very manual process, culminating in a manual review at a microscope by a pathologist, to something that is much more highly automated in the workflow. And then, I think, again, the promise of full digitization at the end. And what I appreciate about the slide that you've put up here is I think it nicely depicts what I think of as the two major buckets of value that we see with digital pathology and AI. There's absolutely a workflow benefit that can happen and does happen with digital pathology. And I think labs are seeing that. This is the benefit that the pandemic really highlighted, just the need to enable clinicians to access patient images from wherever they are. They shouldn't have to go into the lab to read a slide. They shouldn't have to wait for a glass slide to be mailed to them or to be dropped off via a courier. The technology is there to digitize these glass slides, create high resolution images, and then share them in a workflow that enables remote diagnosis. So I think there are tremendous benefits just in terms of workflow, but importantly, those benefits then unlock the potential to bring this really game-changing AI into the picture. And I think what we're finding now, there are an amazing number of AI solutions that are talked about in the literature, that are published on, that are in research settings. Very few of these have been approved for clinical use, but that is changing rapidly. So I think we're still at the early stages of this journey in terms of clinical application, but the potential is certainly there. The investment certainly is there. If you go to any pathology conference, you will see a proliferation of dozens of AI companies that are well-funded and moving into this space. And I'm really excited about what's coming in the next few years in terms of AI and computational pathology into the practice of pathology.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So Mike touched briefly upon the application in drug development. Eric, I'd love to hear from you on what are some applications that you see for AI pathology in drug development?
Yeah, thanks for bringing this up because I think at this conference we're all interested in precision medicine. There are two aspects to that. There's the drug development and discovery aspect, and of course then there's the clinical application side. I do think it's important to talk about both. But on the drug development side, and I should preface this by saying PathAI was really founded on this hypothesis that starting and applying AI pathology to drug development as a strategy would lead to clinical application. So, since our inception in 2016, we've been working with biopharma companies in the translational sense to explore different hypotheses that can be addressed with digital and AI pathology. But in my opinion, I do think, and Mike, I think you said transformative. I think we're faced with a transformation of drug development, biomarker discovery enabled by AI. And I'll give you a couple examples where, and Mike and I used to work together at Roche, worked a lot on companion diagnostic programs. And as far as tissue-based companion diagnostic markers goes, IHC, for example, we tend to create those the same way we've done for decades, meaning during the development process of an assay, you're always tied to what a pathologist can visualize with their eye. And therefore, we've ended up with things like ordinal scoring systems. Let's just take HER2 as an example. 0, 1 plus, 2 plus, 3 plus. I think the opportunity with AI now in drug development, biomarker discovery, is to utilize these tools we have on the AI side, utilize the continuous nature of these tools. So let's not be bound by ordinal scoring systems. Let's have a continuous scoring system, but also leverage the precision these tools have. So when we were at Roche and before AI and digital pathology, we would never launch a biomarker that had a 13% cutoff because no pathologist would want to score that. And actually they couldn't score it in a reproducible way. We've seen that. However, AI can do that. AI has the precision. So this is just one example where I think there's going to be a transformation of how we work with pharma, and we are doing this, by the way. It starts with embedding these approaches into clinical trials, and I think it won't be long before we have FDA regulatory approved AI-enabled companion diagnostics that are continuous in nature and have more precise cutoffs, because that's what's going to better predict response to these drugs, which is, of course, what we want to do and to best help patients and improve outcomes.
Yeah. And Mike, anything to add on?
Yeah, I mean, I think Eric said it very well, and I agree that we are moving toward this new kind of reality where we will have companion diagnostics, AI-enabled assays. I think what I would add is there's a tremendous amount of work being done in this space now. I think pharma sees the benefit of it. The benefits were just described fantastically here, you know, in terms of the standardization and the ability for continuous scoring, et cetera. I think what we need as an industry then is we also need to be able to deploy these effectively into a clinical workflow. And so that has to go hand in hand. And that's been a big focus area for Roche is to say, okay, once these solutions are developed, that's great, but we have to be able to deliver them to the pathologists in a way that they can use them effectively in their clinical workflow in an efficient way. And so that's where these software platforms and workflow solutions need to go hand in hand with the AI solutions as well.
Yeah, it is very fitting that there is a parallel session going on ADCs, antibody drug conjugates, right? You talked about the HER2 scoring system with the ADCs, many of the ADCs thinking about computational companion diagnostic. It's very fitting that we're having a parallel conversation today. At ZS, we often think about helping organizations make precision medicine aspirations a reality, right? As you think about the whole ecosystem and making the promise of precision medicine a reality, how far have we come along?
Your question is precision medicine overall, or as it pertains to digital AI? Yeah, I think as it pertains to digital AI, I personally think we're in the early stages of leveraging the power of what this technology can bring to precision medicine and, of course, to patient outcomes. We often, at PathAI, describe the benefit to precision medicine in two ways. There's the here and now, and we're all familiar with the biomarkers and the companion diagnostics that we have today, and I think that we can use these technologies to improve the reproducibility, improve the accuracy of some of these existing biomarkers. But what I'm personally most excited about is the future of harnessing these tools to discover new biomarkers, and recognize patterns that, as pathologists, we've been seeing under the microscope for decades, but never really appreciated the impact they could have on predicting outcomes. I think TILs is just one small example. Pathologists have known about TILs for decades, but it's only very recently that we're understanding what implications they have, especially in the context of immune oncology. And then maybe the last thing I'll say is, in terms of being excited for the future, some AI techniques like graph neural networks is a good example, truly bring a spatial aspect to the analysis. I know spatial is a buzzword in precision medicine, a lot of people use, but from an AI pathology perspective, what we're talking about is not only quantifying cells or biomarkers, but really looking at the nuanced relationships between different cell types and like proximity. So you mentioned ADCs. So people are interested in interrogating the bystander effect associated with ADCs. With spatial AI, maybe we can look at the proximity of target negative cells to target positive cells and how diffuse or focal is that across the slide. Could that be a way to predict ADC efficacy? So I think that's a specific example of a spatial morphologic biomarker that's enabled by AI that would be impossible for me to assess as a human pathologist.
Yeah, no, I hear you. So Eric talked about how we are just at the start of this journey, right, which I completely concur with. As you think about the future, what are some barriers that you see for clinical adoption or routine clinical adoption of AI pathology?
Yeah, I mean, you listen to the comments of the last few minutes, it's incredibly exciting. It's motivating and wow, why aren't we doing this? I think the reality is that there is still probably around 10% or so of pathology labs that are truly fully digital today. So we're still early in this journey, for sure. And I think there are many reasons for this. There are multiple barriers. The positive thing for me is that most of these barriers are moving in the right direction, or resolving in the right direction. So historically, we've been concerned about, IT infrastructure. How do we move these incredibly large data sets around efficiently in a workflow? How do we store these images that might be gigabyte plus size files per image? And maybe I have 100,000 or 1 million of these a year, depending on the size of my lab. These types of barriers have always been significant, but those are really resolving in the right direction. We still have regulatory barriers that are a challenge. Those, again, are moving. I think we see more and more solutions that are being approved for primary diagnosis here in the US, which has a positive impact. We still haven't seen many AI solutions approved, but that, I think, will change, and that is happening. And reimbursement is also another one that I would flag as just an opportunity for us. We need to be able to value these solutions and help the labs to value these solutions appropriately, because it's a big investment. It's a massive change for the labs. It's a big change that we're asking for pathologists. Despite all of these wonderful kind of potential benefits, it's a big change. And so I think helping the industry to kind of accelerate through that, it'll be important to address these barriers that we've just been mentioning, and especially on the reimbursement and regulatory side.
Yeah.
If I could just maybe follow up on that. I completely agree with everything that Mike said, and this 10 to 15% adoption figure is quoted very commonly. And I think that's probably true if you define it as full adoption, fully digital. But I've spoken to probably a couple of hundred labs over the past few years, and what's exciting is that the vast majority of medium to large size labs are initiating their digital transformation. They're not done yet.
True.
So I think the number, if you include labs that are in the process, the number is much larger than that, which tells me that the barriers are there, but they are significantly lower than they were. And some labs, they're pulling the trigger, and they've found that ROI that makes sense for them, which is incredibly exciting to see. But every single remaining barrier that Michael described is true. And I would probably put reimbursement costs at the number one spot in terms of how do we get the rest of the ecosystem live, full digital as soon as possible globally. So, yeah.
That makes sense. So as this digital or digitizing infrastructure evolves, right, we'll start to see many of the practices be able to capture the data. But one of the concerns that we often hear about is sharing the data. However, there has been recent excitement about federated learning, so that even if you're not able to share the data, can we create a federated learning models that can make this make the AI pathology more prominent, right? What do you think about federated learning and its application?
Yeah, I would answer it this way. I think that's something that we're experimenting with. To determine if federated approaches can get us to better models quicker or enable us to get access to data quicker. I would also say we have, at least up until now, not found any quick fix or silver bullet around our data. Data is challenging, and in this new reality of deep learning, the algorithm is the data for sure, and so that is still a key. It is still a key opportunity, I think, collectively for the industry to work on, is how best to access some of this data. This is why I'm so passionate. I know you asked about federated learning, but I believe in this digital pathology space. Partnerships and collaborations are just going to be so critical to success ultimately. It's why we Roche we aren't going this alone. We've already partnered with Path AI to bring their algorithm content onto our workflow software because we want the best of breed in the world on our platform, and we believe they are a great example of that. And we open that platform to others. So I do think it's not directly answering your federated learning question. Apologize for that. But I do think partnering and collaboration and kind of creative approaches different than we have typically taken maybe in traditional diagnostics is going to be critical here.
Yeah. And maybe just a level set for the audience who may not be familiar with the concept of federated learning, not that I'm the expert on this topic, but the general idea is in a typical analysis, you would pull data from multiple sources, maybe multiple institutions into a common database and do your analysis that way. The attraction of federated learning is to leave the data in situ and tie the data together virtually into a data lake and do the analysis that way. But I agree with Mike, we're experimenting with that as well. But I think it's not, there's no perfect answer, right? There's no magical answer to the data problem. I think federated learning can help, but it's certainly not going to solve all the problems that we have. It's my understanding from a non-expert in this area.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. We touched upon a lot of barriers, right, for routine clinical adoption. As you think about the near and the far, that is the short term and the long term, what are some actions that propel this forward, that propel routine clinical adoption? What are some solutions?
Yeah, I mean, so I'll just jump in there really quick. I mean, I think we need to show the labs where the value and the pathologists where the value is going digital. So and there is a lot of that. I do think as we get more and more of these solutions cleared for clinical use and we begin to get AI cleared for clinical use, I do think these have to go hand in hand. I think the workflow benefits are significant, but they're not enough by themselves to drive a meaningful return on investment for the labs, typically. I think the AI is, or the potential of AI is going to have to be there to do that. And there are some really exciting solutions that are coming to the market, again, which is why I think this is going to have to be a collective effort because there are so many opportunities, so much great work being done. I think we need to apply this AI in an efficient clinical workflow. I think that's key.
Maybe I'll answer the question in a split way, consistent with what I was saying before about, I think the focus of this discussion should both be on clinical as well as drug development. So from a clinical perspective, I think short and long term, you're just focusing in on this challenge of reimbursement. So many people may know that the CAP, the College of American Pathologists, which I'm part of, I sit on the Digital and Computational Pathology Committee, work with the AMA to create a new family of CPT codes for digitization. So these are category 3 codes, which means they're for utilization purposes, they're not valued yet. So in the short term, labs need to, so if you're part of a lab, represent a lab, or know a lab, encourage them to submit these codes to payers. They're not going to get paid, but it shows the payers that there's demand for digitization of slides. So in the short term, I think that's very important. In the long term, on the clinical side, I think it's important for us as a community to generate the clinical data, the health economic data that will justify conversion to category 1 CPT codes and really provide differentiated reimbursement in the future. On the biopharma side, I think in the short term, pharma companies are utilizing AI. A lot of pharma companies have built AI teams, so that's happening. So I really don't have concerns in the short term. In the medium to long term, where I'd like to see that go is pharma companies really embedding AI more regularly into clinical trials. I think there's a lot of opportunity to enroll trials in a more efficient and accurate way by using AI during the enrollment phase. And also at the end of trials, I think for endpoint assessment, I think AI brings a lot to making sure that you're reading your endpoints accurately so you have the greatest chance of having a successful trial. And then ultimately, I would love to see AI-based companion diagnostics, those submissions more frequently going to regulators. Of course, we're working on all that. That would be some of my wishes from a long and short-term perspective.
Those wishes may come true. So to build on what you said, Mike, I do think all the players in this particular ecosystem, right, that includes technology companies like Path AI, diagnostic companies like Roche Diagnostics and pharmaceutical companies, providers, the labs, all of us have to come together, right? Because this is not a problem that one player can solve on its own. This is a problem that we all have to come together to solve. In fact, this PMWC is a great platform where we are all coming together to discuss some of these challenges and solutions. So I really appreciate you engaging in this conversation. I do want to open up to the audience here if anyone has questions for the panel. If you could come up to the mic.
Oh, let's see.
Hi, thanks for a great session. Rob Pogolis from Oliver Wyman. If you guys could speculate a little bit, would love to hear your thoughts on how, as these technologies get adopted and advance over, say, the next 3 to 7 years, how do you think a day in the life of the pathologist might evolve over time, which is going to certainly influence motivations to adopt, excitement, et cetera. I think we've moved beyond fear that this is going to replace me. I don't think that's a fear anymore. I think you maybe heard that. But how would you speculate that might change the day in the life, so to speak?
Yeah. Mike, if it's okay with you, I'll take a first crack at that one.
Please do, yeah.
So for those who didn't hear, the question was, with the evolution and adoption of these techniques and technologies, how will the day in a life of a pathologist change? And I think what you said is absolutely true. None of this is about replacing pathologists. Pathologists are too important in the medical scheme of things to replace. So it's more about enabling pathologists to focus on high-value activities in the service of patients and also clinicians. That's my perspective. So let's take away all the tedious things that pathologists don't like doing anyway. I've sat in a room of 200 pathologists and said, raise your hand if you like PD-L1 TPS scoring. 0 people raise their hand. So let's take away that. Let's not have them. I'm a trained GYN pathologist. So when I was in training, counting mitotic figures per high power field, I hated doing that. Let AI do that. And the pathologist can focus on what are the best tests and workup that this patient's tumor needs. What molecular tests do I need? What novel predictive biomarkers can be used to find a new therapy for this patient. I think those are the sort of activities that pathologists should be focused on. And of course, Mike was talking about, and Pavan, you were talking about resource limitations. Absolutely. A lot of pathologists I speak to are, they're underwater. So they're being asked to do more with less. So I think the workflow tools that Mike talked about are going to be key. And, I'm a precision medicine person, so I'm drawn to the biomarker stuff, but I have to acknowledge the workflow applications are really resonating with practicing pathologists just because that's their day in a life, suffering from resource allocation and challenges related to workflow.
Those resource limitations are really acute in some markets as well. I mean, we really enjoy an amazing coverage of pathologists here in the US, but in some markets that's really a challenge. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity to provide access that's not there today with some of these tools.
Yeah. To add to your point, right? There have been a lot of resource limitations, especially in the pathology lab. If you look at the past 10 years, the number of approvals of the tests or the number of tests that are done by the pathologist have gone over the roof, but the number of pathologists haven't gone up to the same pace. So the pathologists need a lot of help. AI pathology could solve a lot of those challenges.
Yeah, so we have a pioneer in digital pathology and AI here, Mike Bisich, who has a question. So Mike, thanks for being here. And
yeah, I'm not sure I'm pioneer or dinosaur, but I do have a question, since I wear a very pointy, nerdy academic hat these days. What's the best way that we can build the ecosystem for AI apps to enable precision medicine on the digital pathology platforms? How do we do that together in partnership between academia and industry? What are your thoughts? And again, with an eyeball on precision. That's where the action is at this conference. I'd be curious to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question, and there's probably a number of different ways to take it. I'll just speak to it from Roche's perspective, and at least from our digital pathology strategy. I think that ultimately, and again, focusing on the clinical applications of these tools, I think there is an amazing amount of work being done in developing tools, developing exciting AI models that promise some really high potential results. But delivering those in a workflow, in an efficient clinical workflow is critical. And that's why we've really invested in a platform that is open, that can bring in content from a partner like a Path AI or others, but even from an academic medical center as well, into an open API and into a workflow that can be then deployed clinically. I think that's critically important. We need to be able to bridge this gap between these incredible solutions here to bringing them into a clinical workflow. So that's one piece of it from my perspective.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks everyone for joining. I do appreciate the panel for joining and taking the questions.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. I think we are out of time, but we'll take one last question, please.
Okay, got a question. So just like what you said, Michael, this digital AI, beautiful stuff you see on the computer, right? All the AI images. How do you extend that all the way to molecular analysis right now? Are you guys solving that problem? Because there is a big chasm, right? Because as you're trying to extract what you see on the screen, how are you solving that? Are you going back to manual scraping? Is that what you're doing? I'm just curious.
It was a little hard to hear, but I think your question is around the intersection between molecular testing and AI digital pathology.
Yeah.
We're out of time, but just a quick, there are multiple points of intersection, so I'll just give you a couple examples. One is, you may know there's a line of work that's exploring the molecular prediction of alterations, genomic alterations from H&E slides. So this is one example. Another example are fairly simple AI tools that can automate the process of estimating how much tumor content is on a slide, and how does that relate to how much nucleic acid you extract, and therefore NGS success. So those are a couple areas intersection. I think another area more for the future is in a multimodal sense. How can we input molecular data and morphologic data and have AI?
That's where we can help you.
Yeah,
Okay.
and analyze
Quantum Site.
the group to better
Yes,
predict outcomes.
yes.
Maybe that's where you're going.
We solve that problem that Michael was talking about earlier, right? That you're talking about future. Where we are is right now, we're working with several AI companies, right? And we're able to take your images, right? And we're able to extend the workflow all the way to molecular analysis.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And that's where we want to talk perhaps further with you guys.
Yeah, maybe after the session we can
Yes.
follow up
Yeah,
offline.
great.
Yeah.
Thanks for the interaction.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Appreciate the
everybody.
panel. Great topic, great discussion. I think you heard from the experts' mouths. So thank you.